Hi, everyone. It's our Thursday time together, and my guest is having a little bit of computer problems, and I'm sure those of you who struggle with computer issues know what that's like. But anyway, we have an incredibly important and salient topic to discuss today, and that's called the Gut Invaders Unveiled, tackling parasites and yeast for digestive wellness. And I think there's a lot of misinformation going around in the internet. And I think I need to dispel some of that because people don't understand parasites. So forgive me for reading some of this because it's a lot of things to know. I'm not a specialist in parasite, but I have studied parasites in the 1980s with a famous tropical disease doctor by the name of Dr. Bueno, who was from South America. And I did learn that at that time, a parasite, which is a protozoa, it's a single-celled organism. It's about 500 times bigger than a bacteria. And unfortunately for all of us, it seems that somehow in the 1980s, that microbe called Giardia was found in every fresh waterway across the United States, especially for those people going camping or backpacking. It's a huge problem because that's much more dangerous than even getting a pathogen because it's so much bigger and can do damage to the body so quickly. So what I wanted to do is go over the list of parasites that we have. So I just talked to you about Giardia. There's another one that's also a protozoa, a single-celled organism about 500 times bigger than a bacteria, and it's called an Entamoeba histolytica. And that one does a lot of damage. And that's brought to you courtesy of lack of sanitation, which seems to be the problem with all parasites, including the worms. And I know all the women are going to cringe and say, oh, don't talk to me about worms. And they're terrible ones. They're flatworms, tapeworms, thorny-headed worms, and roundworms. And I'm going to read to you how you can get these worms. And one of them, I'm going to shock you, is all the people who love to eat raw fish, raw meat, raw beef. You're very likely to get a worm or get a parasite or get a bacterial infection not because sushi is bad for you, but because what we've done to the environment. And don't forget that radiation spewing out of Fukushima in Japan is polluting the Pacific Ocean for at least over a decade. And I think people need to take stock. Yes, certain raw foods are very healthy for you, but unfortunately, in this day and age, you're taking a huge risk by eating raw fish and eating raw meat or eating a lot of raw foods. It's not something that I brought about. I'm just the messenger, so please don't be upset with me. So anyway, if you get Giardia, if you get Entamoeba histolytica, or you get any of the worms, the flatworms, roundworms, whatever kind of worm you can pick up, here's what can be, how it can be spread. It's where you're swallowing food or water contaminated with these organisms. Having close contact with someone who has this problem, particularly in children's setting, that's for Giardia and Entamoeba histolytica. Traveling within the areas that have poor sanitation. And I think what's happened is that the last two generations being raised by, computers and other things where we don't have mothers teaching children, whoever is acting as a mother, but to teach children basic sanitary handling of food, washing their hands, cleaning the tabletops, making sure that you're not contaminating the rest of the family. Because if one family member becomes contaminated with Helicobacter pylori, which is a really nasty bacteria, or becomes infected with a Giardia, which may not be manifesting any symptoms for weeks, or an Entamoeba histolytica, or a worm, by touching your private parts and that comes into contact with your poop, you can be spreading fecal bacteria and parasites on your steering wheel, on the kitchen counter, anything that you touch. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So all of us have to take a step back and say, hey, how important is my health that I start paying attention to these things? So, okay, so we're getting to number 4, traveling within areas that have poor sanitation. A lot of us, don't think there's poor sanitation, but now because we've all been sort of sheltered at home. Going out to restaurants, even supermarkets, or any place else where we used to shop is an environment that we can pick up the stuff, because sanitation is not as prevalently enforced as it was before the pandemic. Not that people weren't careful during the pandemic, but I don't think they have the staff to keep things as clean as they should. So then you can transfer these parasites picked up from contaminated surfaces, such as bathroom handles, changing tables, diaper pails, or toys, or anything that you touch your mouth when you touch another surface. You should not be able to touch your face with your hand ever unless you washed it twice in hot water and lathered, for at least 20 seconds, rinse, and then wash for another 20 seconds. I know people are going to tell me, have you lost your mind? I'm not going to do that. But let me tell you, you do not want to get one of these things inside your intestinal tract, because they will literally chew up your intestinal wall, cause so many problems that you wish you were dead, even if you weren't dead. So next to picked up from contaminated surfaces, guess what? Having contact with an infected person, if you're having intimate relations, or even the animals can be infected and they can spread it to you from their poop. Doesn't mean that they're literally spreading the poop on you, but they may have poop contamination on their lips, on their paws, and that's how these things get passed. So we all have to be more concerned about just practicing what I call sane sanitation. So then on top of that, what are some of the symptoms if you get Giardia, or if you get Entamoeba histolytica, or if you get one of the tapeworms? You're going to get diarrhea. Why does the body get diarrhea? Because diarrhea is a way that the body learns that there's something harmful inside the intestinal tract, and so it grabs all the available water from all the cellular structure to flush it out. So people don't understand diarrhea. Of course, excessive diarrhea means that you're going to lose electrolytes, and you may have severe consequences. So no, diarrhea cannot be incessant, but just remember, your body is not stupid. It's warning you that you have a problem. And by just trying to stop the diarrhea, by not assessing what the problem really is, can lead to long-term illnesses and chronic disease, which you don't even want to know about. So, of course, you have gas, foul-smelling, greasy poop that can float, stomach cramps or pain, upset stomach or nausea, and dehydration. And, a lot of people can have intestinal pain because, especially of the tapeworms. So what is the problem here now? When we talk about these microbes, it doesn't really mean that you have to remember what they are. If you're having these problems and you've been to a tropical location, it's good to have knowledge of a good tropical disease doctor, because they're the ones most qualified to test for any kind of parasite, whether it be a protozoa like Giardia or Entamoeba histolytica, or something like the tapeworms. So this is one thing you have to be familiar with. And then you would say to yourself, why would I be talking about yeast and fungus in the same matter? Because it doesn't matter if yeast or fungus reduces your immune response, or whether you get the parasite first and it reduces your immune response. These are things that are in our environment. And the fact that we're having an explosion of chronic disease is not helping us. So what do we need to do? We need to know what cleanses we should be taking. A lot of this stuff on the internet where people say, oh, I feel so much better, I've had this cleanse. Let me inform you correctly. You don't get rid of all of the antagonists just by cleansing your 27 feet of GI tract. They can, burrow in and nook and crannies, and they can stay there for a long time. What you are doing with these cleanses, if you use them incessantly without really taking the right probiotic supplementation and changing your diet and stop eating raw food, you're going to have a problem later on in life, because these things don't come out that easily. And if you do this detox without repopulating, in other words, you've now stripped your land bare. Your intestinal wall is bare, susceptible to any other infection that you might ingest through food, water, breathing, whatever. So if you do these cleanses, you need to have a precision probiotic that follows it. You need to be following a diet that excludes raw food, and you should be eating at home for at least a couple of weeks to make sure you're not getting, this cross infection. So these are just basic sanitary things we need to learn for ourselves and for our family and for our loved ones. And I see Michael is joining us. Michael, if you can hear me, let's come in live. I'd love to have you. I've already went and spoke about the parasites, which will be repeating at 5:30 Pacific Standard Time, so that people will get another dose of my explanation of parasites, which includes Entamoeba histolytica and such organisms as Giardia and the tapeworms. So I was talking about the cleanses, and here's my biggest concern with the cleanses is you're stripping your protection off the GI wall. And those of you who are ingesting friendly yeasts or ingesting soil organisms, now you've got a real problem, because these organisms can and will cause other problems inside your GI tract. When you're replenishing your GI tract after you've been exposed to a parasite of any kind, you need to use microorganisms that have been tested for at least 100 years, have been used by human beings successfully, and have helped to really reestablish a good intestinal lining, a good protection on the wall, and allow your body the ability to heal itself. Eat well-cooked food, eat fish or whatever that is cooked through. And I know some of you are going to be rolling your eyes, but I'm just a messenger. I'm just telling you what I've learned in 56 years in dealing with these issues. And I see that our issues, especially among young people, are getting very nasty. And these people are not enjoying their life. They're not able to enjoy their youth because they're exposed to all these diseases. And so when you do have a parasitic infection, like a tapeworm, roundworm, Giardia, or Entamoeba histolytica, you're probably susceptible to any kind of yeast or fungal infection. And fungal infections are dangerous in themselves, because a famous doctor who used to be the head of the UN about 10 or 15 years ago, Dr. Constantini, and his colleagues in the German clinic established that, from his point of view, cancers are caused by fungal overgrowth, or candida, which is the fungal version of, or the mold version, I should say, of yeast, and causes cancer. So when you are exposed to a yeast or a fungus, you become more susceptible to these parasites, and vice versa. If you have a parasitic infection, your innate and adaptive immune system are working overtime. And so when you have these cross exposures, the body cannot defend itself. So that's what I'm trying to teach you, that you have to incorporate a good precision probiotic protocol. Stop eating raw foods of all kinds, and especially stop eating sushi, because we're finding now that these parasites, these worms, are being passed through the sushi. They do have a problem in Japan, and we're getting the problem in the West because people are not used to what I call great sanitation, and they're picking up these worms in the sushi, and it's causing a huge health problem. So I'm sure that, Michael, if you want to take a moment to introduce yourself. I've been sort of talking about the parasitic infections in the yeast while you were fiddling with your computer problems.
Yes, my computer decided to do an update right before I jumped on, and apparently these updates, they take quite a while. Thank you for your patience. Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be back on the show with you, Natasha, to explore some more topics. I heard you talking about the parasites, which obviously was a question that I had earlier in the week. And so I'm excited to jump in and talk more about that. But my name is Michael, everyone. I am one of the founders of Optimyze.me. We are a human optimization center. We have multiple locations here in Arizona, specifically in the Phoenix area. And my previous work, I've been an instructor for Wim Hof since 2018, traveling the world, teaching people about cold therapy, mindset, breathing exercises, teaching throughout the US, Mexico, Ecuador, and just got back from a trip in Poland and Prague. And I've also been teaching XPT, underwater training. My previous career, I was a US Navy helicopter search and rescue swimmer. And now I'm all in on health and wellness, helping people to really empower themselves and take responsibility for their own health through natural methods. So I love exploring all things natural, just to see, how were humans living in previous days, and what can we do in our modern world today to find our strength and eat clean food and stay active and all the things that keeps us young and vital. So thanks, Natasha, and I'll pass it back to you because I know that you were already starting the conversation about the cancer fungal connection, which I find to be very interesting. It's a topic we discussed at the end of our show last time.
Yeah, well, going back, and I'm saying people confuse fungal overgrowth sometimes with parasites. They don't really understand because sometimes the symptomology is the same. The problem is if you have an overgrowth of any of these, including pathogenic bacteria, you're much more susceptible because remember, your GI tract starts at the mouth, and the mouth allows the outside world to come inside your body, where stomach acid is used to break down protein and kill bacteria and even protozoa, which are the parasites that we were talking about while you were off, and allow safe food that's digested to drop into your small intestine. There's a flap, the pyloric sphincter that allows the food to drop into your small intestine, where more alkaline conditions exist for carbohydrate digestion and to finalize our digestion. And people don't understand that their sanitary habits and knowing where their food comes from and how they chew it, how they process it is so important that we don't pay attention to our body. We really treat it like a trash can. And the fact that the last two generations have very little knowledge about sanitary preparation of food. And I'm sorry to say right now, it's not really a time to be eating a lot of raw fish or raw anything because of the contamination of our waterways in the United States. Like every waterway in the United States, whether you're camping or going trailing, you cannot drink the stream water, you cannot drink anything because since the 1980s, all those waterways have been contaminated by a parasite called Giardia. And believe me, it is terrible. When you get it, you're in such pain and it literally shuts your body down. I remember a story of a woman that was hiking in Colorado in the 1980s, and she just put her can of soda to cool in the stream. And even just the one drop of water that was on top of her can when she opened it and she drank it, they had to helicopter her out of there because she was close to death. And I think people need to take this environment collision that we're having with the environment and our health, and the fact that there's so much commercialization of things that are very important, like probiotics, is not really helping us because people are so confused. They don't understand the science, and we don't have more people like you and me, Michael, in the industry who really do deep dives and investigate and would not give anything to their clients that we're not utilizing ourselves. I think that's a big problem in our industry, and that's why I'm doing these shows, because I feel people are completely unaware of what's going on, and they have no clue about worms, tapeworms, roundworms, whatever worms you have, how you can pick them up, the lack of sanitation. You can pass them on to your partner, you can pass them on to your children, anybody that comes into touch with fecal matter. And you can find fecal residue on steering wheels and countertops, anywhere you touch in the house. And that's something that's very important for you to understand, because most people do not understand how their diseases are formed. And I come from a culture where my mother was very strict. When we came in the house, we were not allowed to wash our hands in our sink. We had to go to the bathroom to wash our hands before we came into the kitchen and touched anything. So
yeah, you don't see that very often anymore.
Yeah. And so, like in the old country, they also take the shoes off when you come inside the house. You don't come in with the shoes. But because everybody in California drives and nobody walks anymore, people don't understand, especially if they go hiking, they should not walk in with those shoes inside the house, because you're tracking everything you picked up from that dirt inside the house. So I think the point here is that taking care of our GI tract is the #1 concern we should have, because that is the gateway to health and happiness, or the gateway to chronic disease and death. It's as simple as that. And we need to be able to tell from the truth, from all the facts that are being shoved at us, and people telling us, oh, I've got this great cleanse for you, do this cleanse, and upset your whole microbiome to get rid of parasites, and not knowing how to replenish this microbiome opens you up to a host of other problems you're not even thinking about.
Yeah, I wanted to just add some comments there. You know, there's a lot of buzz about parasites now, and I think I would say the general public doesn't have a really good idea about what parasites are. I think we have some idea of where they come from. Obviously, the unsanitary food handling, like you mentioned. What are some of the telltale signs? You know, what would give somebody an indication that they might have the tapeworm or the parasites, and, you know, at least get them to the point where they start to question, learn, and explore. And then maybe we can move into a discussion about what can we do about it, because there is a lot of information out there about the cleanses, and there's so many different cleanses. I can't keep up with the amount of cleanses that are out there, and which ones are helpful and which ones aren't. You know, you hear stories, right, about different cleanses and then what's coming out of you in the bathroom. And so maybe we could just touch on the parasites a little bit more. How we kind of have an idea how they're getting in. And so they're so small that you wouldn't even notice them. I will say this. One of my team members showed me a video of him at a restaurant, and he was inspecting his food. He's very detail oriented, and he was eating a piece of red meat at a restaurant. I won't call out the restaurant, but they're a popular chain here in Arizona. I wouldn't say big chain, but they have locations. And sure enough, when he opened up the piece of red meat on the camera, you can see this tiny little worm inside the meat.
Oh, wow.
And he pulled it right out. And it was so clear as day. And this was cooked meat. And so I was so fascinated by this video. One, that he caught it and found it. Most people just chop and eat and eat it. And so how in the world is that getting into the food? How is that surviving the temperature of the cooking? And then, of course, thriving inside of your body. And then what type of things maybe would we experience if we had a lot of these, or even some of these? And so I think that's a good place to start, because most people might even have the awareness. And so I'll pass it back to you, and anything you can share about that would be really helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to jump to our new format at 5:30. So we're going to be on Instagram Live, but I did give a complete breakdown, but I'm going to repeat now so that people can understand. And one of the things that I want to leave you with is that people don't know how to revitalize their GI tract after they've done a cleanse. And a lot of them do as much good as they do damage. There's so much confusion of probiotics that it's not really helping people. And number 3, we've completely lost sight of any sanitary conditions in our food supply, that we're almost become like a third world country. And when we're, dealing with sanitation. So they're the 3 big issues that we have at hand. And that's why people from the Middle East generally want to have only well-done meat or well-cooked things. They will not eat anything that's even slightly rare, for that very reason, because a lot of these microorganisms or these, what I saw, parasites, survive heat. And, if it's not well done, and I'm sorry to, rain on your parade, guys who like your meat rare, but it's not a day and age where we could afford to take that chance. And so, Ashley, if we're switching into Instagram, I will go down and name all the parasites and name my recommendations. But let me just tell you, if you have a parasite, you're going to know it. You're going to feel tired. you're going to have terrible cramping. You're going to have terrible pain in your intestinal tract. You're going to have blowout diarrhea. You're going to be so miserable, you won't know what to do. And let me tell you that the medications they have available, even in the 1980s, were only 60% effective. So just think of that. It is very serious. And even if you have a cleanse, you may be cleansing most of it out. But if you have any residue left, it's there. And it's going to wait for the opportunity to take advantage of your immune system. So it's a time to really start thinking about your body and just think about how we can reverse this whole system that we undermined that used to be so good to us. And how did we come to this place, and how do we get back to a place where we don't have to watch everything we eat and everything we touch?
Right.
So, right. Ash, are we moving?
Yeah. We should move on over to Instagram.
Yep.
Yep. We're going to hop out of here and move to Instagram.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay.